Well, let's talk now to Michael Goldfarb, who's London correspondent for globalpost.com, a news and opinion website. He joins us this evening. Thanks very much for your time. I mean, to what extent do you think, you've reported, I think, from Arizona, to what extent do you think inflammatory political rhetoric could be a contributory factor to this?
Well, in the case, we don't know all the facts, but it seems increasingly like this young man is a kind of disturbed loner. So, you know, did listening to the constant din of anti-government rhetoric, which is part and parcel now of the American experience, tip him over the edge? I mean, I don't know that we can ever find that out. I think that, you know, to step it back, you just have to look at the atmosphere in America. I was there for a month, just last autumn. You know, and the number of people who came up to me as I traveled around from East Coast to West Coast and down South said, you know, something's going to happen, man. Something is going to happen, because the supercharged daily doses of this extreme political rhetoric, you know, anybody who stopped and thought from it would have to think, you know, sooner or later, someone is going to act out on what is being said.
You say that, but I mean, political assassination or attempted assassination is not exactly new in the United States, is it?
No, I mean, although, you know, it's, look, the worst decade, you know, in the 1960s, when I was, you know, young, there were 5 major assassinations. And at the same time that was happening, you had tremendous social progress. You had, you know, an economic security that doesn't exist now. And so the rhetoric was always counterbalanced by a broader reality. The other thing, Ben, is that it's been this coming together in the last 20 years of the extreme rhetoric of right-wing talk radio people who are, you know, at bottom they're entertainers. They're working in commercial radio. They find a rap that people want to listen to. Advertisers are willing to buy time on their radio programs. Everybody gets rich. But what happened in the early 90s is the Republican Party embraced Rush Limbaugh. In fact, in 1995, when the Republican Congress was sworn in, this was after they had big midterm elections, and Newt Gingrich became Speaker of the House, they invited Rush Limbaugh to become an honorary member of their caucus. This is the big difference between the decade of the 60s, when you had this political violence, and today, in that the people who have a vested interest in keeping the heat up, to the people who make money off this kind of rhetoric, the right-wing radio hosts, their owners of the radio stations, are in a kind of complete alliance now with the Republican Party. And so the Republican Party has taken on this rhetoric. They have learned that it is successful for them. They win elections when they are most aggressive. And so it's an entirely different era than it was, say, 40 years ago when John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
So you talk about, you know, turning the heat up, if you like, the aggressive rhetoric. Is anything, though, after this likely to change in the United States, do you think, in the political theatre?
Well, you'd like to think that there'd be a pause for reflection. But I have to say I'm a little bit cynical about the prospects for major change on the back of this incident. You know, you remember that Barack Obama asserted himself into American politics by giving one of the most dramatic speeches urging unity that I've ever heard. It was a beautiful speech. He wrote that speech for 4 years and ultimately won the presidency as a unifying figure. The reality of day-to-day life in Washington and in America in general is that to preach, as he has done eloquently, unity is simply not enough. It has to come from within, first of all, the leadership of the Republican Party. And then second, it actually has to come from the American people themselves. And I'm not sure, based on my most recent experience, that people are able to do more than, you know, perhaps stand back for 72 hours, take a pause, and then, you know, the next time the health legislation is up for debate again, it will be, I fear, business as usual. And I think that 2 or 3 months from now, you won't see any difference in the way people talk to each other over the political divide.
All right, well, very interesting to get your views. Thank you very much. That's Michael Goldfarb, London correspondent for globalpost.com.